Hi everybody, Levi Clay here, and in today's video I am going to be walking you through some of my top tips to make you better in Guitar Pro 8. Now if you don't already have a copy of the software, Guitar Pro 8, check out the link in the description. Those guys are currently running a 30% off sale for Black Friday, which runs till the 1st of December. You can also check out a link in the description to my top 10 most viewed transcriptions from YouTube, where you can download the Guitar Pro files for yourself, so you can maybe get to work using some of those files in Guitar Pro. So let's jump in and take a look at the tips. So when you start making files in Guitar Pro, I think one of the best things that you can put some time into is making sure that the sound you're using is appropriate for the music that you're working with. So what I've got here is a simple little musical example. There's some palm mute and some chords. You could do this with absolutely any Guitar Pro file. What we're going to do is we're going to select that, and we're going to create a loop by pressing the loop button up here at the top of the page. And then we'll come up to the top left and we will press this button, which allows us to bring up the inspector. Now, if you open your inspector, you're probably going to be faced with this song button. I want you to come on over to track. And when the track is selected, this is where we can start making changes to the sound of our instrument. Now I created that loop, so now when I press play, the file's going to loop. Now what you can do is, overdrive is usually where I start. I don't usually recommend the distortion patch. I know that's counterintuitive, but I think the distortion patch is a little bit brittle. But I'll show you that actually. So if I press play on this particular patch, and then select overdrive, and if I want to change my sound, I can come down to electric guitar, and then hover over to distortion. And if I go to the first patch, distortion, we can preview each of these sounds. So here's our distortion, our fuzz octave, fuzz, hard rock, lead with a low one. Now there's nothing to stop you looking at the overdriven sounds. I'm going to suggest we go to distortion and let's check out the lead patch. You may find that this is an appropriate sound for you, so I'm going to select that lead patch. Now from there we can come down to the section underneath. If you click on this, it's going to bring up the effects chain and also the sound bank that you're using. Now you can check out the guitar that you're using. So in this particular instance I'm using a Les Paul sound. If we press play again, I can change that. So electric guitars, let's see what it sounds like on an Angus. Not a bad sound. Let's keep going. Let's check out the Satch. Subtle difference, still a nice sound. Let's check out the Telly. Now one additional change that you can make there is you can actually change the pickup that you're using on the guitar just by selecting the headstock. So again, we've got the Telecaster on the bridge pickup here, but I can change that to the neck. I quite like the Satch guitar, so I'm going to go back to that. And I'm going to check my pickups. So this is the neck pickup, neck and bridge, and bridge. I quite like that, the Satch pickup on the bridge. Now, if you go down into the effects chain, you can select any of the effects, you can insert new effects, but to change effect sound, we just click on the pedal in question. So here we have a compressor pedal, and you can adjust the level of compression. We have a graphic EQ, again, you can tweak that EQ with the track playing. And find a sound that is appropriate for you. The same with the amplifier. We might change the, let's try changing that amplifier. Let's press play on the track. Now I'm going to select stack, come down to guitar amp. I'm going to change it for modern. So we have the modern amp here. The clean tone is selected. You could check out the presets if you really wanted to, but I'm just going to slam this into lead. Push up my gain. Bring down some of that mid. And now what I really want is a little bit of delay. So I'm going to come over to my delay, push up the mix. Now, if you really wanted to, you could select Show Pedal Board, and you can see that pedal board in its entirety like that, and you could make your changes like that. That's totally an acceptable way of doing things. What I would really suggest, though, is once you have a sound that you really like, come up here next to your patch sound and save as user sound preset. Now when you make a track moving forward, you'll be able to come into here and you'll be able to load up some of the patches that you've already saved. Another great trick to have at your disposal is being able to change sound patches in the middle of a particular recording. It stops us from having to use multiple tracks. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have the delay playing while we're playing the solo part, but I'm going to remove the delay when we're playing the rhythm guitar part. So we've already got our delay sound, and just to make it a little bit more over the top, I'm going to push the mix up on that delay. So just a reminder. So we have a lot of delay there. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to come up to where our guitar is. Where lead is, and I'm going to copy this patch. I'm then going to press plus up here, and I'm going to copy from track 1. So now, it becomes a little bit clearer if I do this. You can see that we have 2 tracks, lead and lead 1. Now, lead 1 is my new track. I could come in here, change the name of this. Let's call this one rhythm. Now I'm going to turn off the delay in my rhythm patch. So I've brought up the pedal and I'm just pressing the pedal to turn it off. Of course, another way that you can do that would be to just press the off button to the right of the track. Now, my delay is turned off on my rhythm track. The delay is turned on my lead track. But of course, we're still using the lead patch. So what we want to do to change that is come up. We're going to go up into Edit and come down to Sounds. Now we notice we have Lead and Lead 1. That's because I haven't actually changed the sound name. We can of course do that if we come over here, rename this. We'll call this Rhythm. Perfect. Now when I come up to Edit Sounds and select Rhythm here, this will tell Guitar Pro that we should use the rhythm track. Now it's going to be using the rhythm track for all of it. I want it to change to my lead patch here. So same idea, when I want to change my sound, come to where I want the change to happen, Edit, Sounds, and here I want lead. And it's going to put a little marking on there to tell us that that's lead. Now this is controlled by whatever we have over here. If I called this delay, you'll notice on the score it now says delay. Now when I listen to this, we'll have our rhythm sound and then our lead sound. And if you wanted to make any other changes, if you wanted your rhythm sound to maybe have a little bit less distortion on it, that's something we could do. Come over to our rhythm track and to my amp, bring the gain down a little bit. Now when I press play, we're going to have lower gain with no delay, and then our gain's going to come up and we'll have delay. Check it. Now you can use that to its full creative potential. If you need acoustic guitar tracks, you have clean guitar sounds, anything like that. If you want to have multiple parts displayed on one score in Guitar Pro, that's the way to do it. Let's start out with some very simple tricks. Probably the easiest of all is making sure that you learn to use the keys on your keyboard rather than pressing buttons for rhythm length. This is going to increase your speed of input. So usually I find that a lot of my students want to come over here and they want to press buttons. So they'll go to their keyboard, they'll press the number 3, and then they'll come over here and they'll change the rhythm. And then they'll move to the next note and they'll put in their next note. And then they'll change the rhythm to whatever they want it to be. And that requires you to go between this window and the tab over and over again. But if we hover over any of these rhythms, what you're going to see is it's going to tell you the rhythm and then a little symbol, plus/minus. So this is a quarter note, and plus/minus is going to change us between rhythms. So rather than needing to come over here and press buttons, now when I press 3, if I press minus on my keyboard, it's going to make the note longer. If I press plus, it's going to make the note shorter. So if I want to write out something in Guitar Pro, rather than having to jump between input and then clicking a rhythm, I can do I don't know why we would want to play that, but you notice I was able to do all of that just keeping my hand on the keypad. Now the same thing is going to be true of other key articulations. I would recommend 2 others that you get under your fingers. One is going to be the triplet. And again, if we hover over the triplet over here, you'll see you can create a triplet by using the / on your keyboard. So rather than needing to come over here and select triplet, I can stay where I am, press my /, and then suddenly I've created a triplet. And the other rhythm, that I think is probably quite an important one for us to get down, would be our dotted rhythm. Again, if we hover over here, it's going to tell us you can dot a note by putting a full stop on it, or a period for you Americans. So if I press that full stop, we have our rhythm changed. Now we can do this and learn to write any rhythms without ever needing to come over and actually press the buttons over on the side. Great tip. So in this example, I want to show you how to remove notation from a transcription. This seems like the sort of thing, like, why would I want to do that? But depending on who's going to be looking at the transcription, if you've looked at any of my transcription videos on YouTube, you'll notice I don't have notation on them. That's a conscious choice for 2 reasons. 1, it takes up a little bit less space on screen, so it doesn't interfere with the video. But 2, because I generally don't expect the people to be looking at the transcriptions to be readers. So some jobs I'm submitting to clients with notation. In fact, most jobs, all the jazz work has notation there. But when I'm delivering work for someone like Andy James, where we don't feel the notation is important, it's a great way to save on page space. So once again, we're going to come up to the inspector in the top left. When we click on that, we can come back to our track window. Under musical notation, we currently have tab and notation selected. But if I deselect tab, we'll have just notation. And if I deselect notation, we'll just have tab. Great way to tidy up your scores if you know you're going to be delivering them to people that don't necessarily need to read the music. We still have the rhythm there, but tab and rhythm. Great combination. So just a quick break in the middle of those tips to remind you guys, head to the link in the description where you can currently get 30% off Guitar Pro 8. It's the biggest sale those guys have ever put on, and it runs till the 1st of December. While you're down there, you can also find a link to get my top 10 most popular YouTube transcriptions that racked up 7 million views, and use those in your new copy of Guitar Pro. Let's get back to the tips. So my next tip is going to be for people that don't necessarily like to input the notation either using the notation or using tablature. So I'm talking about clicking numbers on a keyboard. You can actually come up to the View key up here, and if we slide down, you're going to see Show Fretboard View. If I select Show Fretboard View, I'll now have a big fretboard. Now using that fretboard, rather than having to input notes by putting numbers in, I can actually just click on the notes where I want them to be. If you're more of a visual approaching learner, you may find this slightly easier. It's definitely not my favourite way of doing things. It becomes a little bit faster if you use your left hand to deal with pressing the arrows to change to the next note. And there we go, a C major scale, and I didn't have to input numbers. Now this tip is a very short one, but it will make sense when you watch any of my transcriptions. What you'll notice is when I input a note in Guitar Pro, you can hear the note being played. I find this to be very, very useful because it allows me to check the transcription or check what I'm writing out or hear the thing that I'm composing without needing to press play. If your software is not set up to do that, we can do that by coming up to the sound menu, and you'll see a button down here that says play while editing. If you select that button, mine's currently selected, now when I input, you won't hear the notes being put in. And that's totally fine, but I find it much more reassuring is probably the best word, to come play with editing. And now I can hear the notes. Huge help for me. So this next tip I'm going to give you is more of a secret feature in Guitar Pro, and it's certainly not a feature that I really use, because when I create transcriptions for people, I'm looking at creating notation that they can understand. But if you really want to go in and customize the MIDI playback of any of your tracks, you can actually adjust the individual placement and velocity of notes. Now we can do that in 2 ways. We can select on the note, right click, come down to Note, and then Audio Note Settings. And functionally, it's the same thing to select Note at the top of the page and come down to Audio Note Settings. But you'll also notice that there's a hotkey for that, Shift F. So if I press Shift F, that's going to bring up Audio Note Settings. Now in Audio Note Settings, you can adjust the duration of a note. So you could make a note shorter, you could make it more of a more precise form of staccato. You can offset the note, have it come in early, have it come in late, and you can change its relative velocity. Now, if that's something that is really key to the way that you're maybe composing, working on demos of tunes, and you want people to really understand the rhythm, and you want them to copy the way the MIDI sounds, you can make all of these tweaks here in Audio Note Settings. Cool feature. Now, for someone like myself, where the focus of my transcriptions is the way they look, I think it's very important to create your own custom style sheet in Guitar Pro. So I would recommend coming up into File and Style Sheet, which you can also access with F7, and go through each one of these settings and change things to suit your taste. For example, you might not want the tuning to display on your transcriptions. So I'm going to turn my tunings off. We don't have any chord diagrams in here, so it's not necessarily relevant. But if you come through each one of these, you're going to find some interesting settings that you can make tweaks to. So you could, for example, display time signatures at the beginning of each system. So each line will have its own time signature. That could be a useful feature if you're using Guitar Pro as a guitar teacher and you want each line to look like its own musical example. For me, I like to come over into notation, and I like to deselect display circle around half and whole notes in tablature, which is something that I do when I'm creating transcription videos. And another feature or another button that I always deselect is indicate where the string is touched for artificial harmonics in tablature. Because currently, if I want to create a pinch harmonic, let's tell it to do a pinch harmonic, it's going to ask us what the sounding note is and where the right hand is to create that sound. So we have 5.7, 8.8, 12.6, 17.7, 24.7. When I look at a transcription and see this 3 pinch harmonic 24.7, to me, I don't find that a particularly useful thing. It's just going to clutter up my transcription, whereas I can use my style sheet to deselect, indicate where the string is touched. Now, I'm not going to go through every single one of these settings, but what you can do in the style sheet is you can create your own look to your scores. So you can use your own fonts, you can have titles displaying the way that you want them to. And then when you've done that, we're just going to come down to the options button on the left and we're going to go Save Style. Now I can save my style, and that's going to save in the My Style section. And then anytime in future when you load up a transcription, you can either come over to the style sheet and select Load Style, or let's get rid of that. We can come up to Guitar Pro 8, Preferences. You can actually tell it to auto-select a particular instrument. So in my case, I tend to use things like jazz guitar. But you can also force a style sheet. So if we go Force Style Sheet, here's a custom style sheet that I've made for when I do transcriptions for Luke. So if I wanted to only have my transcriptions look one particular way that I've spent all that time setting up, it's a great way to do it.